Hey, what's going on everyone? It's Kitten of Doom, and in today's video we're going to do part 3 of the Mage Build Explanation series. And if you've missed the other two, I did a part 1 and 2 so far of other items, kind of like relics, boots, starter items, stacking items, and lifesteal items. So if you missed those two, be sure to check them out. And in today's video we're going to be going over penetration items and luxury items, and I'll explain what luxury items are in a second. So for mages, there are 5 different penetration items that you can choose from, and I will be going over all of them and what they do. And they are Obsidian Shard, Spear of Desolation, Spear of Magus, Divine Ruin, and Demonic Grip. And generally as a mage you always want to at least buy 1 penetration item, and even possibly 2, because penetration is always really great on mages, just makes their abilities hit a lot harder. First item we're going to be going over is Obsidian Shard, and this item is pretty self-explanatory. You gain 33% magical penetration, and the stats on this is 60 magical power, and it costs 2,150 gold, so it's pretty good. It's a pretty cheap item if you want some penetration. And a good note on this item to remember is that this item does not increase your current magical penetration by a percentage. It just makes it so that your magical attacks ignore 33% of your target's magical protection. So it's like whoever you hit, you're gonna ignore 33% of their protections. So if you hit like a guardian or warrior who built some magical defense, then you kind of just ignore some of those bits of magic defense, if that makes sense. This item's a really good pickup pretty much on every mage. If you want to be building like 2 penetration items, go ahead and pick this up. This is almost pretty much a staple in every mage build, so you can never really go wrong with building it. Alright, and next up we have Spear of Desolation, and this gives you 80 magical power, 20 magical penetration, and 10% cooldown. Passive on this is if you receive a kill or assist on an enemy god, all of your cooldowns are reduced by 1 second. I really like picking up Spear of Desolation just because of its stats and the extra cooldown reduction. Normally you can build this early just so you can get that extra cooldown, and I think it's pretty much just a really great item for a bunch of mages right now. You can also never really go wrong with building this either. I do like building like Spear of Desolation and Ob Shard together, so if you're wanting to do double penetration you can do that. And the passive, you kind of really don't pick this up for the passive. I pretty much pick it up for just its stats and cooldown, but the passive is pretty nice when you are team fighting a lot and you get assists or kills. Then it just decreases your cooldowns by a second, so it's a good item in my opinion. Alright, next up we have Spear of the Magus. It has 15 magical power and 15 magical penetration. Passive on this is your abilities. Reduce your target's magical protection by 10 for 5 seconds and max 5 stacks. So Spear of the Magus is really good on mages who have dot or tick damage, so you pretty much don't want to pick this item up if your mage is really bursty. So think of gods like Kukulkan, Anubis, Poseidon, Alpwash, Agni, Hades, Nox, and Zhongqi, because they all have abilities that do like damage over time or take damage. So you pretty much just want to be building this item on them just because their dot damage is going to be reducing the target's protection over those 5 seconds of that tick damage. So just remember to pretty much only build this on tick damage. Oh, Aphrodite is another really good item to build this on as well. Alright, next up we have Divine Ruin, and this gives you 80 magical power and 10 magical penetration. And enemies hit by your abilities have 40% reduced healing and regeneration for 8 seconds. So this is a pretty important item because you want to pick this up if the opposing team has enemy healers on the other side, and you know all the healers like Aphrodite, Chang'e, Sylvanas, Ra, Terra, you know, like all of those. So pretty much when you hit any ability on them, they will receive this debuff where they have 40% reduced healing. So this can drastically turn a team fight or help you kill those healers a lot faster just because they aren't healing for as much. So definitely pick this up if you see any of those healers. And it also has pretty good stats with 10 penetration. I would say don't pick this up as solely your only penetration item just because it only has 10 pen. But if you kind of have penetration boots and another penetration item along with this, you'll be hitting pretty hard. So just remember to build this to counter build healing on the other side. And this also counters self-healing. So gods like, you know, enemy warriors that heal, like Hercules and all that, will get countered by this item as well. And lastly, we have Demonic Grip, and a lot of people don't think that this is a penetration item, but it kind of works similarly like Executioner does for hunters. The passive on this is your basic attacks reduce your target's magical protection by 12% for 3 seconds, and stats are 40 magical power, 30% attack speed, and 7% movement speed. So this is an item I'd only recommend building on magical ADCs, which are Chronos, Soul, and Freya, because they rely mostly on like their basic attacks and they have higher attack speed than other mages. So pretty much just pick it up on these guys. You can also pick up a second penetration item to go along with this as well, and it is a pretty good item for those basic attack mages just because they rely so much on their basic attacks. And that wraps up all of the penetration items. Just be sure to remember what all of them do, and feel free to pick up at least one penetration item in your build or even 2, and you will be hitting pretty hard. Alright, now next up we're going to be talking about luxury items, and by that I mean that these items are really expensive and you pretty much don't want to be building these items until late game where you have more gold available to you. So we're going to be talking about Radek Hoody, Chronos Pendant, and Soul Reaver. These are definitely the most expensive items in the game for mages, along with Book of the Dead, which is expensive, but that was a lifesteal item. But right now we're going to be talking about Radek Hoody, and stats on this is it'll give you 125 magical power and 30 MP5, and the passive on this is it increases magical power by 25%. And this item actually provides a total of 156 magical power due to its passive, along with the 30 MP5. So the MP5 does help out a lot if your mage has mana problems. So you gain mana every 5 seconds, I believe. This item also multiplies your basic attack damage on your gods, so it's a good thing to remember, especially on basic attack mages. And Radek Hoody is definitely a staple in every mage build. You always want to be building this like 4th or 5th item. You always want to be building this last, no matter what. It's just too good of an item. It gives you a shit ton of magical power to not build. You pretty much always will see this in every mage build, no matter what. So definitely don't forget about this item, and definitely pick it up for your last 1 or 2 item slots. And Radek Hoody is 3,300 gold, so just keep that in mind to save gold to buy it late game. Next up is Chronos Pendant, and it is in the same tree as Radek Hoody. So it gives 80 magical power, 25 MP5, and 20% cooldown reduction. Now this is the main item you want to be building if you want cooldown and if you want your abilities to be up more often. Go ahead and pick this up, and the passive on this is actually really cool as well. Every 10 seconds the pendant activates, subtracting 1% from all of your abilities currently on cooldown. The initial countdown will not start until you leave the fountain. I would suggest not building this until a little bit later on as well, just because it is pretty expensive, but it does have some pretty good perks with the MP5 and cooldown. So if you like cooldown, definitely would recommend building this, and with mages who do have long cooldowns, this is a good item as well. This item is a little bit more unpopular at the moment just because of how expensive it is, but if you can afford it and if you are snowballing, go ahead and pick this up. It is a great addition to any mage build. Next up is Soul Reaver, and this is another pretty expensive item. 2,950 gold. Stats are 100 magical power and 300 mana. And the passive is pretty long on this, so when a god takes damage from your abilities, they take 10% of their maximum health in additional true damage. If multiple gods are hit, the damage is applied to the one with the greatest maximum health. This can occur once every 40 seconds, so this is definitely a luxury item just because of how expensive it is, and it does have a really great passive. You don't typically see it in Conquest right now just because there are other items that are cheaper and have benefit mages in other ways, but this is a pretty good boost of magic power. It gives you a bunch of mana, and you can actually chunk people with Soul Reaver. Magical junglers would probably like to pick this up, especially like Al Kwong and Morrigan, just for extreme one-shot potential with Polynomicon. So that's where I typically see Soul Reaver most often, just not in mid lane mages, more of in the jungle, but it's definitely item that can pack a punch, so if you're ahead, go ahead and build this if you'd like. And next we're going to be talking about utility items, and they are Gem of Isolation, Ethereal Staff, and Rod of Asclepius. Now, Gem of Isolation gives you 90 magical power, 250 health, 10% crowd control reduction, and the passive on this is enemies hit by your damaging abilities will move 25% slower for 2 seconds. So Gem of Isolation is definitely a staple on certain mages that can benefit from this item, and the top two mages that I think of when I hear Gem of Isolation is Kukulkan and Poseidon. Just because of Poseidon's Whirlpool, if you put that down on someone, they get slowed even more, and it is really difficult to get out of that whirlpool when he has Gem of Isolation. And same with Kukulkan with his tornado. Enemies just get slowed by a lot if they get hit with this. You know, other mages that have kind of those big AoE abilities can benefit from this as well. And I really do like Gem of Isolation just because it gives you more health and crowd control reduction. So it definitely makes you more tanky, and you can survive a little bit better if you build this with the additional health and everything. So definitely pick this up on Poseidon and Kukulkan. Another great god to build this on that I always build Gem of Isolation on is Alpwash, just because his body abilities slow so much already. Gem of Isolation will help make those slows even greater. Anubis would be another one just because his 3 slows. And Zhonghui is another one that comes to mind just because his 1 slows already, so you can just amplify that up. I'm sure there are a couple of other mages I'm forgetting, but just kind of wanted to give you those as references. And next up we have Ethereal Staff, which is in the same tree. These are all in the same tree as Gem of Isolation. This gives 90 magical power, 200 health, and 20% crowd control reduction. And your abilities deal bonus magical damage to enemy gods equal to 5% of their max health. This effect can only happen once every 10 seconds. So this is a little bit similar to Gem of Isolation in that it gives health and crowd control reduction. And basically crowd control reduction is anything, you know, that stuns, knocks up, any kind of hard CC like that. So this will help reduce how long like those stuns and things happen to you. And I actually like building Ethereal Staff on tankier mages, or if I'm actually having a hard time surviving in team fights or in lane, you could pick this up and get the additional health and crowd control reduction. So mages that can benefit really well from Ethereal Staff are like healing mages and tankier mages like Zhangqi and like Aphrodite, Hell, Chang'e. And then the passive's nice on this. It's kind of almost like a mini Soul Reaver because you're dealing 5% of their max health. So this is definitely a good option if you don't want to build like a defense item. This is kind of a hybrid of the two, so it'll help you survive while still giving you a bunch of damage. And lastly, we have Rod of Asclepius. This gives 75 magical power, 250 health, and 10% movement speed. Passive is allied gods within 70 units have their healing increased by 10%. If you are in combat, their healing is increased by an additional 10%. So obviously you only want to be building Rod of Asclepius on healing mages like Chang'e, Aphrodite, Hel, and Ra. And this will just increase your overall healing to your allies, so you definitely want to pick this up if you want to give that utility and extra healing to your team. And it also makes you tankier with the health, and movement speed is also another great bonus of this. So I definitely recommend it on the healing mages, and it's a great item to pick up to help your team as well. This item pretty much won't do anything if you're picking it up on someone who doesn't have a heal. I mean, it'll give you magical power and all the stats, but the passive will be wasted if you use it on gods that don't have heals. And that is going to wrap up part 3, guys. In my next video, we should be done by wrapping up attack/movement speed items and defense items. So we will go over those in the next video. And thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if this has helped you guys at all. And I will see you all in my next video. Bye.